most certificates, client-based certificates, are user-based. So a user can log, like for example with a Chromebook, a user can log into the Chromebook and then go through a process where they download a certificate. The certificate has information embedded in it that they know that it belongs to that user, gets installed on the Chromebook, and then the Chromebook will use that to connect to the network after that.
Interesting. Hey everyone, today we're talking about client certificates and how to use them with Chrome Enterprise. So what is a client cert?
So a client cert is installed, you install it on a Chromebook. It can be associated with a device or a user, and it's used to authenticate the user to websites. So a lot of companies will have a website that requires authentication via certificates instead of username and passwords. And then they're also used, and probably more commonly used, to authenticate the devices on a Wi-Fi network. So you can configure your Chromebook to connect to a Wi-Fi network that requires, it's like a corporate network that requires a specific certificate that you've had installed on the device. So by doing that, you can obviously keep other devices off of your network.
Is that something that's pretty common in enterprises today?
Oh yeah, almost all enterprises have some sort of a certificate-based auth for their network.
And does that ever factor into things like single sign-on or authentication?
Yeah. So most certificates, client-based certificates, are user-based. So a user can log, like for example with a Chromebook, a user can log into the Chromebook and then go through a process where they download a certificate. The certificate has information embedded in it that they know that it belongs to that user, gets installed on the Chromebook, and then the Chromebook will use that to connect to the network after that.
Interesting. So Ray, how do most companies issue certificates or install certificates on their machines?
The easiest way, and I think the way most people do it, is through Microsoft Windows. So you'll set up a Windows server as a CA, and Google built a Chrome extension. So you install a Chrome extension on your devices. That extension communicates with Microsoft server to pass credentials to the server and download the certificate, install the certificate on the device in its TPM.
Got it. And that's the machine cert that's on the actual device itself?
Yeah, it can be a machine cert, or it can also be a user. Microsoft can generate user-based certs as well.
Okay. So if I'm an organization that actually requires both, maybe I have a machine cert to get access to my network, and then a user cert to get, like you talked about earlier, user cert to get access to a certain web application that's internal or something like that.
Yeah, you can install both. That extension will let a user request certificates, basically enroll the certificate. So it'll communicate with the server and download the specific type of certificate onto the device. Mm-hmm. In some cases, people will actually create, and we've done this for people, create a custom extension. So you may want to send custom information to the certificate server to download, to customize the actual information that gets, or log that certs happen. There are multiple reasons that you might want to do that, but you can create your own custom extension and use the same APIs that Google uses in their extension to install the cert on the device as well.
Got it. And why would you need or want to use a custom extension as opposed to the Google-made one? Or maybe even if you have a third party like Aruba or Cisco, some of their products have Chrome extensions already built, but why would you maybe want your own extension?
Well, say you had a custom workflow that you needed to follow. In some cases, you might install a bootstrap certificate that will allow you to get your device on an internal network, and then the second step might be to install a real certificate, associated with a user. Mm-hmm. And that would be one thing where if you wanted to make a more seamless experience for your users, you'd want to create a custom
extension.
Yes, you'd want to create a custom extension.
And I know this is something we've done for several customers. And was that most of the reason why is the custom workflows they've needed?
Yes. We've also done some work where we've integrated with CAs that weren't supported, that there wasn't
Interesting. Okay.
an extension already available. So we kind of had to start from scratch and use APIs to communicate with CA. And then, so we use the external APIs to talk to the CA, pass the information about the user, the device, things like that, to the CA, get a certificate back from the CA, and then use the internal Chrome APIs to install that certificate on the device.
Got it. So if I'm an organization, I have a Microsoft CA, one of the versions we mentioned earlier. How do I go about getting Chromebooks on my network?
So yeah, I suppose you kind of have a chicken and egg thing going, right? The device isn't on the network, doesn't have a cert. How do you get it on the network? You would typically set up, you might have another Wi-Fi network that was configured to allow access just to that CA. So, and the internet user logs into the device, and then it can access that CA directly and download the certificate. And then Chrome will automatically switch over to use the more secure network. Okay. Some people also will use Ethernet, so they'll actually plug in an Ethernet cable via an adapter into the Chromebook. And we've also had customers that will actually load a temporary cert, and I kind of mentioned this earlier, where they'll load a temporary cert on USB key, plug the key in, go through a process of pulling the certificate off the key, installing it on the device. That certificate will allow them to have access to the network. And in a lot of cases, they may stay with that key, or they stay with that certificate, or they might switch out that certificate for one that's specific to a user.
And I'm assuming the reason they would maybe use a bootstrap certificate is maybe they're having their devices enrolled by a third party or an IT provisioning company, so they don't have to touch each one. But then that way they don't also have to hand that third party company an internal certificate. Is that usually what you see people doing? Yeah,
right. You can imagine that if you order a lot of Chromebooks, you might have a company do some sort of white glove service where they do some pre-configuration of the Chromebook. So, and one of those things might be to install a certificate on that Chromebook that will allow it to get some level of access to your network so then you could ship your devices directly out to stores or wherever they're going, offices, things like that.
Cool. So I know we talked a lot today about Microsoft CAs. Mm-hmm. I think it's probably important to know that other network providers that have CAs or have their own certificate authorities, Cisco ICE is a good one example. I know Aruba also has a solution. They've actually built solutions for Chrome OS as well too, by building their own extensions that you can push out across your network. You also have the option of, if you need something custom, having that built as well too.
Right. And then one thing we didn't really talk about was, we mentioned it, is using certificates for authentication. Mm-hmm. So in a lot of cases, companies will build like a website that doesn't use username and password, but uses certificates to authenticate. And you can push those types of certificates as well down to the devices. And in some cases, we've seen where, and this is where the bootstrap certificate comes in. You can have a bootstrap certificate installed on a device, which then allows the device to communicate with the CA to install like the final certificate. So you wouldn't actually be able to, so then like if you had your CA available on this Wi-Fi network that was kind of open but not really open, and you allowed any device to connect to it, of course, if they had the login information for that, or if it was even public. The device could connect to it. It could access the CA, but if it couldn't authenticate because it didn't have that certificate on it, you wouldn't have to worry about people bringing their own devices, plugging it into the network, and being able to access that CA to download certificates.
Got it. So it's another security protocol. It's another level of security then.
Yeah.
To make sure that every device is company owned.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Because the certificates are installed on the devices and can be configured to only be installed on Chrome devices.
Cool. Thanks for watching this episode of CloudUp. Are you using certificates at your organization? Drop a comment. Let us know how you're using them with Chrome Enterprise.